Okay, so good morning. I apologize for the delay of game here. So today I wanted to do something. Someone's at the door?
No, it's okay.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to do something related to our sugi, but also related to Pesach, because we were off last week and we're going to be off the next couple of weeks. So I thought we'd do the issues of schirut and she'ela when it comes to Pesach. That makes the most sense. So there's a couple of sugis here, but the easiest one to do, one that's most, I think, the most classic, one sec, is the question of bedikat chametz and schirut and she'ela, because that's an explicit Gemara. So if you open up in Pesachim Daf Daled for a moment, Daf Daled Amud Aleph, so the Gemara there has the following question. Just make it a little bigger for Elitzur. By the Syrian by Mine Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Hamaskir Bait Lechaver Barba Asar Al Milivdok. You see that? I don't have the Gemara in front of me, so I can't tell you exactly what it is, but it's about. There's actually two questions from Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Okay, so they ask a question from Nachman Bar Yitzchak. If you rent a house on the 14th, who is required to do bedikat chametz? Ala maskir livdok. Is it the renter, that is the maskir, the person who rents it, the original owner, the chamira didehu? In other words, I rent you a house, right? I own a Airbnb in Ranana. I'm going away for Yantiv, so I rent it out, right? Sorry. So the chametz in the house is mine. So I have to do bedikat chametz, even though you're now renting my house. Oh, Dilma, ala socher livdok, or perhaps the renter, the person who's renting it, should do bedikat chametz, the isura didehu, because the isura birshutei, because after all, the chametz is in your property. Michael, you rent the house for me. Is it on the 14th? Is it my responsibility to do bedikat chametz, or your responsibility to do the chametz?
And nobody can fix it. They did both.
Okay. I didn't hear it. Joe, did you say that to us or not? I didn't hear you. You're muted, Joe. I don't know how you got muted. We don't hear you if you. Okay, Joe, I'm not sure you're speaking to us, but if you're speaking to us, we're here. Okay, thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much. Okay, we still don't hear you, Joseph, and we don't hear you, Elisur. So if you want to speak up, speak up. So we'll see in a moment. The Rabbeinu David does say, in fact, that both of them have a responsibility to do it, but we'll get to that in a minute. Now, when I originally get to initially, it should be just one page on two sides. So when I initially read this, I can say this is a question that relates to schirut, or it could be relates to bedikat chametz, right? In other words, is the question that's at stake a bedikat chametz question, or is the question that's at stake a schirut question? So let's be patient, but let's put that out there at the beginning. So again, either the chametz is yours. I'm renting it to Michael. So either the chametz is mine, so I have to do bedikat chametz, or it's in Michael's reshut now, so he has to write the isur is in reshut. So Gemara says Tashma hamaskir bait lechavero, a very suggestive comparison. If Michael, let's say Danny rents something from me, ala socher la sola mezuzah. So that's interesting. So what would that teach you?
The responsibility
of the renter, right? So it doesn't sound like it's a bedikat chametz question, because if there was a bedikat chametz question, then it would be, or you wouldn't be able to make an analogy necessarily to mezuzah. It sounds more like a schirut question than a bedikat chametz question, right? Okay, so what we're basically saying is that all responsibilities generally fall upon the renter, and again, we could ask the question: does the renter own it now? That's a question that we could ask ourselves. We'll ask that. The Gemara says, "Hatam Amar of Masharshe." There, when it comes to mezuzah, Rav Masharshe said mezuzah chovat hadaru. The mezuzah is the responsibility of the person who lives in there. Hachamai. What would be your evaluation of such of such an analogy? Is the analogy relevant to heroes? It's the person who lives in it, right? Again, Rashi says, I don't remember if Rashi says this here, but Rashi says in a couple of places, right? The mezuzah protects you, right? So that's why it's the chovat hadar, the person who's living in there. Right, there's a whole set of sources that talk about mezuzah protecting. The Rambam, of course, is very against the notion of mezuzah protecting you. But here, this has nothing to do with protecting. This has to do with machalat asura, and not just machalat asura, but isur in general. So So
Isn't Machloket just fits the cover, like,
what is the house
does
required?
the house need a mezuzah?
Or does the person need to?
Does the house need to be, does the person need to do the bikkur?
Yeah, so that could be the question, right? It could be very well be that. So now the Gemara does a third stage, stage 3. We're gonna have to go through all of these stages again. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Yitzchak finally gave an answer, and he said, or he was the one who I think the original question was asked to. He said, "Tanina, we have a brayta. Hamaskir bait lechavero. If someone rents and I rent again to Michael, im ad shelo masar maftechot chalar ba'asar. It depends when I gave you the keys." This, of course, is the most interesting thing for me, as if this is because we've been talking about Socher and Shoel the whole time, and now, right, as kinyanim and when and whatever. Now all of a sudden, it turns out there's a whole different part. There's different criteria. That's why this Gemara is very, needs to be addressed. It says, Michael, the moment it depends when I gave you the keys. If I gave you the keys before the 14th, before Tuesday night, then alamaskir. If I haven't given you the keys by Tuesday night, then I have to do it. But if I gave you the keys next Tuesday afternoon, then you have to do it.
So is it before the earliest time you do bidika?
Yes, before the earliest time you do the bidika. Before the earliest time you do bidika. Before bidika kicks in. Then I just brought the last on the sheet, but you can just take it here. There's another question of Rav Nachman Yitzchak, which we'll see in a moment why it's important to me. A second question, given that you said that it's all based on Masira Maftechon, so Hamaskir Ba'ad L'Chavero Be'ar Ba'asar Cheskato Baduk or Eno Cheskato Baduk, which I didn't want to go into, but that is, if let's say, okay, I rented to you on the 14th, I give you the keys, right? You show up at your Airbnb on the morning of Erev Pesach, meaning so already you only got the keys on the morning of Erev Pesach. You talk about there's Masir Matechod, and you just give me a code for whatever, let's just assume that's the same thing. So can I assume that you did bedikat chametz? Because after all, you were supposed to do bedikat chametz last night. Right, so that's a separate question where the Gemara has a whole other discussion. But again, like I said, when we look at this Gemara originally, or up front, we have to ask ourselves, is this the bedikat chametz question in the first version, right? It's who is responsible to do it? Is it the maskir or the socher? We have to ask ourselves, is that a question about is that above mitzvah question or a psachim question? Which is fair enough, right? You understand the distinction? Okay, so here, there's at least 3 ways to address this in the Rishonim, or 4 ways maybe. The first way is this book, Rabbeinu David on Psachim. Rabbeinu David is David Bonfield, right? He's a Rishon, right? We only have him on Psachim and a couple of other places. It's not on the Bar Ilan thing. He lived, I think, in the 15th century, right? Looking back, right? No, he was a student of the Ramban. He lived in Toledo, if I remember correctly. Or he went over to Catalonia, to Barcelona, but I think he lived in Toledo. So you're talking about, right, Ramban comes to Israel, dies in 1271. So you're talking about 13th century. Excuse me, I said 12th century, 13th century. And I don't know, it's whatever. It's in Psachim, he's kind of like a standard approach. This one I just took a photo of because it was too long a text to write up. But he says as follows. He goes along Michael's way. He says, basically, why are you addressing this question at all? The question really should be, they both should have to do bedikat chametz. Right? He says, Tamu, maze sheila, mi over alav b'bayira b'yimatzei, hu tzarich. Sorry, mishu over b'bayira b'yimatzei, hu tzarich livdo. What do you mean? Whoever's going to violate b'bayira b'yimatzei has to do b'dikat chametz. V'yavshar shem sholim mi over alav b'bayira b'yimatzei. It can't be the Gemara is questioning who's chayv in b'bayira b'yimatzei, the maskir or the socher. The maskir because it's his chametz, the socher because he's living there. Shem kena you omrim b'feirush mi over alav. Who's the b'bayira b'yimatzei victim? Right, so that can't be the question. They should have asked the question, who has to do bitul chametz? Because that's biblical. Right, that's an assumption. We'll get back to that in a minute. It's obvious that regarding bitul chametz, there's no question. The vaday man the chamira didei alav didei ramya levatla. Who has to do bitul chametz? The guy who owns it, right? I rented it to Michael. I have to do bitul chametz. Shemish ein shelo chametz ein bitulo klum. If Michael does bitul chametz on my chametz, it doesn't have any effect. So I obviously have to do bitul chametz. He says, what kind of question is this? Right? Bedikat chametz is only the Rabbanon, right? Whoever is going to, right? It's only whoever violates Bali Rabbi Yamatzeh is going to do this. right? It's only going to is the person who has to do it. So who's violates Bayura Bayimatse? Not 100% clear yet. But then he comes along and says along Michael's lines, he says, if I rent to Michael, neither one of us violates Bayura Bayimatse. Why not? And then this is a very radical statement, very crazy, in fact. No one violates Bayura Bayimatse. And then he quotes a Gemara that's in Bava Kama Gemara that we've come across before. Do you remember that Gemara? That's the case of if I steal something from you, right? And then I magdish it.
Okay.
Doesn't take effect. Why not? It's not mine. But if you're magdish it, also doesn't take effect. Not in your reshut. Okay? So that's an assumption of the Gemara. It has to be in your reshut to be magdish it. You have to control it. You don't control it right now. So here he takes that Gemara, which talks about, and he applies it to chametz. He says, just like the fact that once something is not in your reshut, you don't have complete control over it. So too here, when I rent you something, again, here I'm doing it from my will, unlike there where Gazal, right, I stole something from you. Right, it was the classic case that I always thought about. It was like, I stole something from you. So you say, I'm going to get you, I'm going to be magdish shit. And then you'll violate also, right? No, it doesn't work. Right? But again, he applies that to me renting it willingly, which is a very, very radical thing to do. Right? It's, I gave it to you of my own free will, but I obviously haven't given you, even if I give you the rights to use the products in the apartment, even the chametz in the apartment, but it's not birshuti and it's not shelcha, and because of that, no one violates Bayura Bayimatse. That's an assumption about Bayura Bayimatse, right? That you have to, it's not just seeing chametz in your house, it's actually owning the chametz that's in your house. You have to have two pieces. It has to be in your space and you have to own it. And without that, there's no violation of Bayura Bayimatse. And because of that, correct. Exactly. That's why I was going. Right. Right. And I don't know what the next word is. Nikdalo b'schiru because of v'shtar v'chazaka v'abaytu b'shuto l'gamar l'inyan chametz. Kedarin l'kaman. Right. It's you got it. However you got it, and because of that, it's I didn't finish the passage, but it's not right. It's not yours. It's not mine. It's not in my reshut, and therefore there's no Bayura Bayimatse. And therefore, what's the question? The question is only on the Durabanan level. In other words, we drop down a level. Really, right? No, he says in principle, we're there at the Doraita level, right? Misha.
So Doraita is still only the Isur of eating it.
Correct. There's still only Isur of eating it, and therefore they wanted to know. Who does bedikat chametz here? In other words, the Rabbanan. Sorry.
Right, you wouldn't have to cover it up even.
Correct, because it's not yours.
This is probably
because you can keep it as long as it's correct. You can keep it in your house. Exactly. There's no Bayura Bayimatse once it's somebody else's. Correct. 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 In other words, it's in your reshut in some way, but it's not yours anymore. So you can this is where you can sell chametz. This is on the basis of this you can sell chametz. But again, his point is this is only a durabanan because there's no violation of Bayura Bayimatse. And then the question only becomes on the durabanan, which we have to see why in a minute. Durabanan, where it's having solved the schirut problem. This is not a schirut question anymore because schirut we recognize you own, right. You don't own the chametz, you own the property. So that solves the Bayura Bayimatse problem. Yeah. Theoretically, if there was a Doraita problem, then it would be obvious that whoever owned it would, whoever controls it would have to do bedikat chametz, right? But since here no one owns it, so there's no Bayura Bayimatse problem, and therefore it drops down to the question. Okay, so who does bedikat chametz to solve some other problem? Yeah. Which we'll see what it is in a moment. Okay, so that's a very, very interesting thing. Rashi also believes that this is durabanan. Rashi says, "Aval hacha bedikat chametz durabanan, dimishum Bayura Bayimatse." If you were going to raise the problem of Bayura Bayimatse, and then here Rashi comes up with a different reason why it's not Doraita. Why? Ha'amar lekaman desagile bebitul ba'alma. We know there's a Gemara in Daf Vav that says Doraita bebitul ba'alma sagi. All you need to do is bitul chametz. Right? This is Rashi's point. Rashi says there must have been bitul chametz here. I don't know by whom.
By whom?
I'm not sure by whom. Let's just assume the original owner did bitul chametz. Okay, so I was mevatel my chametz. right? Which is in Michael's reshut right now. That seemingly works, right? That seemingly works. So that drops it down to Durabanan. It's not a Durabanan because we mobilize the Gemara of Zelafi Shenu B'Shutov, Zelafi Shenu Shalom. It's Durabanan because I did Bitul. Once it's Durabanan, I did Bitul, so then it drops down to.
But once you're Mabatolet, and it's in my reshoot, doesn't it become mine then? It's like as if I took.
Only if you, right, you make a kinyan of some sort. The fact that I threw it into Never Never Land means you have to.
Right, by the opinion on it.
Yeah, then in principle, once I was Levata, that you could go ahead and drink the whiskey, but you're not going to do that because it's Pesach, right? Okay, so he said. So again, we have two reasons to say this is the Rabbanon. The whole question of who has to do bedikat chametz. Either who has to do bedikat chametz because objectively from dinei kinyanim, there's no possibility, there's no need to do bedikat chametz because there's no bayi by matzeh, or there's no real din midoraita to do bedikat chametz because there was bittul done.
But that's Rosh is assuming Bittel's done, whereas the
right, whereas the Rebbe is not assuming. Right, it's not exactly. He says there's no need to do bittul. Right, there's no need to do bittul because immediately there's no bayi by matzeh. Automatically, there's no bayi by matzeh. So again, just to finish up Rashi, Hamar the linian the kama the sagile bebittul ba'alma imei siach daitemine umashalei ka'afra. In other words, as soon as I do that, right? He says, by the way, you don't need a formal bittul. All I have to do is say I'm not touching that anymore, and that's already I made it into afra. And then he says, I said, right, a little different nusach. I said, all the chametz that I have in Michael's house, right, is chametz, right? Torah said this headache of doing bedikat chametz now, which we do only on the Rabbanan level, but again, the Rabbanan level for a different reason than the Rabbeinu David, al mimutal. Okay, so yet so far we have two. This both Rabbeinu David and Rashi share the assumption this is only a Durabanan question, right? It's only a Durabanan question either because it's not in your reshut, or it's a Durabanan question because you did bitul. Okay, this whole thing makes an assumption about bitul, right? And Rashi makes a huge assumption about bitul. And how does bitul work? That bitul can work on chametz that I know about,
right. Even it's not
right, and that it's also right. The bitul can also work on chametz that's not in my possession. Does bitul work on chametz that I know about?
I don't know.
Does bitul work on chametz that I know about?
Oh, you're supposed to get rid of them.
Can I go ahead and say this box of Cheerios that I brought from America is ka'afra da'ara?
Yeah. Isn't that what people do when they put the stuff out in front of their house?
Then
That's not.
no, you burn it first. Right?
No.
First of all, it's on your reshut.
Okay, that's not.
Right? We sell our chametz.
Right.
But I'm saying, let's say I know I have chametz.
Right.
Right? I know I have a piece of bread and I leave it in my freezer, and instead of selling it, I just do bitul. Can I just do bitul?
But there's nothing that they're asking.
What do you mean? I said I read it to Michael. I left a whole pantry worth of chametz in there.
You said it. We're just asking who's responsible for bedikat. Might be there's nothing there, but still you have a create the bedikat. That was the question. I'm assuming he didn't clean out the house before Pesach.
Then he did a betika.
No, because bedikat is a formal.
He says, he says, as long as I say I'm no longer involved with him. I assume that's what it is. So this is a debate in the Gaonim. Okay, and it's actually two girsot in the Rambam. So if you just skip down on the sheet, oh no, it's not the next thing on the sheet. Great. The Rambam says, the Rambam in the text that we have says, Umayashbata Zoha Murabah Torah, who Shivatala Chametz Belibo. Right, what is tashbitu? You should get rid of the chametz. You should decide you have no chametz at all. Okay, so it sounds like, right? One sec.
So it sounds
That's not telling comments.
So it sounds like it doesn't sound like that you can buckle. If you know you have, a loaf of bread in the freezer, you can't be buckling.
I don't know about that.
He says, right. Yasim libosh ein birshoto chametz kol.
You tell them comments. No.
But
It doesn't say whether you know better or not. We're not in the way where it's definitively it's there.
So
I don't need it.
it's for football, right?
One sec.
One section. He does know that, right?
Oh.
Find it here. It says. Sorry. Sorry, just 1 second. Yes, if I remember correctly, it's 2 Girsa in the Rambam, but I see that Girsa that I printed it from the Safari is the same Girsa as the as the snack. Eric Ben.
You don't have to, are doing.
So you do a low. Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to show you quickly right now. It's our Girsa. Sorry. Our Girsa says, Maya Shprat Amor Torah. I'm sorry. The Kesef Mishnah, it didn't come out properly. So just the right hand text is Maya Shprat Zohar Amor Torah. Shivatela Chametz Bilov Yachshovato Keafar V'Yasim B'Libo She'ein B'Rishuto Chametz Kal V'Shkol Chametz B'Rishuto Areu Kafar. You should think, I'm getting rid of all of Chametz. This is the Frankel Rambam. Remember, it was done by a banker, right? In the back, he has this thing called Yalkut Shinuyei Nuschaot. You can see it here. Right, there are different versions of the Rambam. I'm just going to show it to you. I'm going to go over here for a second to show everybody. If you look over here with me for a second, you can see in Perek Bet Halacha Bet, he says, Shivatel Chametz, Ken hi B'Rabbeinu Manoach, Uviktav Yad Tet, whatever, all these, in the Ktav Yad Svarati, it says this following, Shivatlu V'Leta Chametz, and then it says, Viktav Yad Al, Shivaer, Kol Chametz Hayadu Alo, V'She'eno Yadu Alo. You see those words? Know everything you know about. Right? So there's another Girsa, the Rambam, which is also in the Gonim, that you can be mevatel chametz that you know about and not know about. So here, you're right that this text is not 100% clear. But if you read that Girsa, then it makes it 100% clear that you can even be mevatel chametz that you know about. Right, and that bittul takes effect on a doraita level. So you can take a box of chairs and say, "This is gafar bahara," and it turns gafar bahara. Right, exactly. The Rambam here is not 100% clear, but most people take the Rambam to say that you can only be mevatel chametz that you don't know about. Meaning, what do? You do bedikat. No, I don't think so. I don't think that's not a standard. No, you can't be mevatel chametz you know about. But if we take a step back from, so again, that would be within just to remind you where we're up to in terms of the context of the shir, because I lost my focus for a moment. So we have 2 reasons to say this is D'Rabbanan. Right, one reason to say it's D'Rabbanan is because or because in Rashi's thing, because all of bedikat chametz is only is only D'Rabbanan, because after all you did bittul. But that assumes that if I rented Michael a house with chametz in it with bagels in the freezer, so then. Right, I can do bedikat chametz. That would be 2 Girsaot in the Rambam. Okay, but again, all these assumptions assume that bedikat chametz is D'Rabbanan. But is bedikat chametz really D'Rabbanan or not? That's the big question. Is bedikat chametz D'Rabbanan? They both assume that yes, either right. In other words, you've solved the bal yiral bal yimatzeh problem because it's not in your property, or you solved the bal yiral bal yimatzeh problem because you did bittul. But is bedikat chametz D'Rabbanan? So what's the purpose of bedikat chametz? So here is a very famous machloket, right? The most famous machloket, right? There's 3 ways to view it, right? There's Rashi and the Ran's reading of Rashi, and then there's Tosfot. So the Mishnah in Bava Kama says, Mishnah in the first Mishnah says, Orla arba asar botilat chametz lo raner, right? You do bedikat chametz. Says, I'll just quote it from Tosfot. This is the next text on your page. Orla arba asar botilat chametz perish hakuntrut shelo la'avor alav b'bal yiral bal yimatzeh. In other words, the purpose of bedikat chametz is to make sure you don't violate bal yiral bal yimatzeh. We have to understand how that works. How does bedika make you avoid bal yiral bal yimatzeh? Here, there's a few differences in the Rishonim, but the Ri doesn't like that. Kasha the Ri, they came with the tzarech bitul. If we still require you to say kol chamira v'chamia, and so that's more important actually, right? Umidoraita bitul ba'al masagin. Midoraita, all you need is bitul. Amai tzrichu chachamim bedika. So why do you need to bedika at all? Once you do bitul, so you could tell me you do bedika. Right, based on what I just said in the Rambam, you can understand. If you have that other, right, it was, as long as you, right, exactly. You have to, bedika is to get rid of what you know about. Whatever you don't know about, you can get rid of bitul.
Yeah.
Right, that would fit in nicely. But if you have that other Girs Taram, you can even do bittul for things you know about. And Tosfos' question is really about makom. Hey, why are you doing bedikat chametz as well? Once you go ahead and say kol chamer v'chamer, it's good enough. So Veneer the Re says the afagav the sagi b'bitul ba'alma. Really, in fact, all you need is bitul. Ichmiru chachamim livdok chametz ulevaro shelo yavo leochlo. Means what happens? You can do bitul, but if you have chametz there, Tosfos seems to assume that you would actually know there's chametz there.
Right.
And then what would happen? You're not used to walking around not having a cookie. So you walk by. Yes, you did bitul. I know the halachic value of this is dust, but it's still a cookie, so you take a bite out of it.
Now what? Wait,
Right.
what just happened?
So that's why we do bedikat chametz, to make sure there's no cookies around. You ate chametz.
I ate.
You ate chametz. It had no halachic. It was afar, but it's still chametz.
Well, you can
What's
put
it?
that.
The right that chametz?
Yeah, it's the right to. You did it Isra Achila, because Isra Achila chametz doesn't relate to the halachic value of what this is.
You haven't made that comment. It's made that door.
Think of it if you ate somebody else. It's the same thing if you ate
What?
somebody
What's
else.
up?
If you steal a piece of chametz from somebody else, so it's halachically not yours, but it's still chametz.
I see. Okay.
Afar is just not yours.
Versus none.
Not that you changed the. It's still
Right, you've gotten rid of your Balimatze problem, but you haven't gotten rid of your Lot chametz problem.
Just to change the ownership.
But it's
Right, exactly.
literally according to Tosfos, they're well.
Yes, bedikat chametz 100% is Durabbanan. Yes, Tosfos takes the Gemara, to put it in simple terms, Tosfos takes the Gemara and Daf very seriously. It says bedikat chametz is only Durabbanan.
And
That's
this
also-
opinion, according to the, well, I guess the acceptance of what we said, Rambam accept. But you know, there's way don't.
Correct. So again, he wants to make sure that
You don't need it.
That-
you don't right. You can never find right.
You're gonna probably be tempted. So
No. Oh, correct. But it could be even if you don't know. It could be even if you don't know. You might still find them. They might still in this house. There's cookies everywhere. I hide them during the year. So okay. So the Ran, on the other hand, takes a very, very different point of view in this whole thing. This is very famous, right? Top 5 Rans in the world. In the Shas. So he says, "Ela kachi karan shel dvarim shezeh shamar Torah tashbitu yachol litkayem beechad mibet dvarim." When the Torah says get rid of your chametz, you can do it in one of 2 ways. Meaning, when it says midoraita bitul sam bal masagi, really you can do bitul. It doesn't mean, this is critical. It doesn't mean only bitul. It means also bitul. Do you follow? Right? Yeah, you with me? It means you can midoraita. You can get away with just bitul. You can also get away with
It's just
bedika. Correct. Because what does bedika do? Right? Listen to what he says. Oshi vatel belibo kol chametz sheyesh birshuto v'yotzenu machshavato mirshuto v'sagi b'hachi midoraita. In other words, you can just say bitul chametz, that all the chametz is in your house, and you've done enough midoraita. Afilu b'chametz hayadu alo, i.e. Rambam, right? Even with chametz that you know about. Oh, im lo bitlu belibo klal. But if you didn't do bitul, tzarich min haTorah sheyivdok acharav b'kol makom shu ragil limatzei sham, v'yivarenu min ha'olam. Or you can do bedika and get rid of it. Ubebiur zeh hu shenech leku b'mei yivarenu. That's where the Gemara has a discussion later on. How do you get rid of after you do bedika? How do you get rid of it? Ulefichach kol she'ino mevatel chayav livdok. By not doing if you bitul, you still have to do bedika.
No.
Kedei shelo yavor alav b'bayur al b'yimatzei. No, it's
Didn't it just upgrade the Doraita?
yes. Bedika is doraita.
It's harder to do diesel and Bedika.
No.
But you always say if you bittel after, if you miss doing Bedika, do the bittel because it's the almost socket.
Mhm.
Here he's making it sound like if you didn't have a chance to do bittel, which sounds like a simple one, do Bedika. Which sounds like more work.
It is more. I don't understand. I don't understand what you're saying.
Why would you do Bedika? Because then you didn't have a chance to do bittel.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. He does. Most of the people who discuss this round do not discuss the fact that he brings up bitul first. Right? No, it's when he says it's that it's
He's making it sound like
like-
when you do bittel, it's
right.
Bedika.
I agree, but most people say it's a choice. But you have a choice of one way or the other, right? It's not. Tosfos says the purpose of bedika is just to clean up unnecessary crumbs, basically, just to get rid of it's some secondary problem. The Ran, in the name of Rashi, says no. This is fundamental. You have to actually do bedikat chametz as a doraita. You can't do it as doraita. Exactly. It's one of the options available to you, right? And it solves the bal yimatze problem. How does it solve the bali roi bali matzeh problem? So first he says you have to do it with biur, right? But if you did bitul, that would be enough. So now why do we do it? Since bitul is talui in your machshava, when all you did was say, oh, this is nothing. Ve'ein deotean shavot, right? He's quoting Mar Brachot, right? It's people, right? Yeah. In other words, some people are like, I'm so excited to do the mitzvah. I'm happy to say my chametz is nothing. And some people are like, damn it, if I'm going to get rid of that whiskey, right? That means a lot to me. They're not going to take it as seriously, the bitul. Right? That's the Kriya Kilan. I should have underlined that. Words. Maybe your bitul won't be serious enough. Do you follow? You won't really mean it, especially if you're talking about chametz that you know about. This is why the rabbi said, must speak gamkin min Torah. He's saying, so they only words. You could do either one midoraita, but even if you do bitul, we still require you to do bedika, because maybe you won't take it seriously. It's not because shema yimtza, right? It's not because you might find chametz and eat it. It's just that you might not mean it. You might not mean it in the first place. Then he quotes those. Right? But again, his chiddush is that you might not mean the bedika at all. Right? He says, don't take Tosfos seriously. The Mishnah or Larbas or Botkin the chametz or Aner. The first Mishnah in Pesachim is only midirabbanan. No. He says the author of our Mishnah doesn't believe you need bitul. Ela bedika. All you need to do is bedika. Right? And if you find something, a nice piece of cake, after you did bedikat chametz, you're certainly going to get rid of it. After all, you did bedikat chametz, you showed you were serious. Shemer tomar lefmafrei avarle. If you find a nice piece of cake, you'll think maybe you violated, backwards. Leta sharei samcha. Here's his reasoning. How does it work? Let's say you did find something afterwards. He says you weren't violating bali roi bali matzeh. Why not? Sharei samcha Torah al chazakot. וכל שבדק אותן מקומות שרגיל להימצא בחמץ יצא ידי חובתו ואין לו לחוש לכיכר בשמי הקורא. What does he say? He says, you don't violate bali roi bali matzeh. But there was a piece of cake in your house. There was a cookie. He says, it's still not bali roi bali matzeh. But you didn't do bitul. There's a piece of cake in your house. He says, you're not violating bali roi bali matzeh. You want to know why? Because there was a chazaka. Once you have a chazaka, once you check, as long as you didn't check, so maybe there's chametz in your house, then it's violated bali roi bali matzeh. Once you checked, there's no bali roi bali matzeh anymore. Why not? So here there's a machloket in the Rishonim. Some of the Rishonim say, what more can the Torah want from you? You checked. You did a good job checking. The fact that you missed the spot happens. So that's not right. The Rabbeinu David even says you're an ones. You're an ones. You're not chayv bali roi bali matzeh. It was like lightning struck, right? What could happen there? The Ran doesn't seem to go down that way. He seems to say that the fact that there's a chazaka somehow, it doesn't turn you into an ones. Just the chazaka itself is strong enough to beat out the bali roi bali matzeh. Bali roi, what does the Torah say? Don't have chametz in your house. If you have a chazaka, there's no chametz in your house. That's good enough. By the way, what's the best proof for that? The next question of the Gemara. What's the next question of the Gemara? I don't have to do bedika if cheskato baduk. In other words, if I come in on the 14th, I can assume you did it. I shouldn't. What if I find the cookie there? What is that? Was I followed by? No, there's a chazaka that beats out the bali roi bali matzeh. Okay. Why is this, Michael? You had a question before?
I'm just thinking about when Pesach, first night of Pesach comes out on Motzei Shabbat. We do bedika and we do bitul. There's this idea that you keep some chametz for.
Right, and then you
mevatel. So can we learn anything from that?
So
we know it's there.
Right, we know. So first of all, right, we put it outside, we get it out of our reshut, and then we're mevatel it. But yeah, then you see that it's bedikat chametz you did do. So again, we try to do everything. The question is the bedikat chametz that we do before bitul, is that being mekayim the doraita to save us from the? We try to do everything, or is that like the Ran says? That's the Ran position. Tosfos says we do it just because maybe you'll find something along the way. Now, it could be, because I want to bring this back to our Gemara for a moment. right? We talked about our Gemara as being a question of schirut or being a question of, right? Is it a choshen mishma question or is it a bedikat chametz question? It's a orachaim question, right? What was our Gemara's question? Our question was, again, remember, just all the way back to Rav, right? Bar Minei Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, right? If I rented to Michael a house on the 14th, right? Who has to do bedikat chametz, right? What does he say, right? Is it al hamaskir livdok, or right? Because the chametz is right, it's mine, or al hasocher livdok because it's in his reshut. It could be that this question falls along the lines whether bedikat chametz is doraita or dorabanan. If the point of bedikat, let's start with Tosfot. If whoever does bitul, I do bitul. And the only purpose of bedikat chametz, let's say according to Tosfot, is what? To avoid finding something, then who should have to do it? Obviously, the socher should have to do it. If, on the other hand, bedikat chametz is doraita, because that's what solves the bayi problem, right? And then maybe you're much more open to saying that the owner of the chametz is going to violate bayi matzeh. After all, Michael, in the hospital, you don't violate bayi matzeh, right? You understand what I'm saying? So in other words, it could be this question if we want to put it down the road. Again, I did this all to explore so again, just to summarize what we're up to right now. Then I'm going to go into the second part, which is that it's a socher problem, right? Which is okay. That's the second part of this year. But again, if we want to say, so we have to understand what the purpose of what the purpose of bedikat chametz is. It could be the purpose of bedikat chametz is to solve your bayi matzeh problem, right? The Ran's position, right? It could even extend to, right? We talked about whether, right? We mentioned as a side, we talked about midoraita b'dil b'al masagi. If we take that seriously, does that affect chametz you know about or chametz you don't know about, right? But we noted that both Rashi and Rabbeinu David assume this is a question on the Rabbanan level. Rabbeinu David because you have, right? In other words, eno shalo eno b'rshuto, or Rashi says there's only you already did bitul. You remember you already did bitul. But that's Rashi's general position. Right? You already did bitul. But what if you didn't do bitul? And Rashi says the bedika is doraita. Oh, cool. So if the bedika is doraita, then maybe this question might break down along those lines, right? In other words, whether it's the bedikat chametz is for a secondary reason, or according to Rashi, bedikat chametz is doraita, and then maybe in fact it would be on the mask. Okay, that's all part number one. Before we get to the second part, I only have 15 minutes, but quickly I want to just talk about for a moment the mezuzah challenge, right? Stage 2 of the Gemara. The Gemara said, "Oh, hey, we can prove this, right? A mezuzah. Who has to do the mezuzah? The socher. Okay. How seriously do we take that? That a socher has to do a mezuzah. So that's a machlokes rishonim also, right? If you look on the left-hand side, I'm skipping the Gemara for a moment. Okay, we don't need that. But the Rambam says, "Hamaskir b'ayit lechavero." Do you see where I am? Yeah, the Rambam says, "Hamaskir b'ayit lechavero." If you rented a house from me, right? Even if you have to pay money to hire somebody, and right, you have to. It's your responsibility. Right? It's the person who it's not a cheftzadin. It's the person who's living there. It's not the house needs a mezuzah. It's the person who's living in the house needs a mezuzah. Okay? And then when he leaves, he doesn't have to take it away. So it sounds like the Rambam believes that putting a mezuzah is doraita. Right? So if putting a mezuzah is doraita on the socher, right? Then that at least would explain the initial part of the Gemara, right? In other words, again, it would be a little strange, right? Because the Gemara asks a Durabanan question according to most Rishonim, and then answers with a doraita din, right? In other words, you have a problem with who's supposed to do bedikat chametz, and you come with a hammer, right? Look at mezuzah, right? Well, that's obviously it's different. Right? That's chovat hadar. That's only a doraita, right? That's obviously a din on the gavra. That's not like the house has to be baduk, right? It's a little different. However, the Tosfot doesn't believe that. He's very famous Tosfot. It's famous debate with it. We can't go into now, but just to remind you, this is text I'm sure you've seen before, right? Tosfot says, I believe the renter who has to put up mezuzah is only the Rabbanan. He says, the Gemara in Masachet Menachot, we learned this a number of years ago. If you rent a house in Chutz La'aretz for 30 days, it's patur mezuzah. Right? If I'm renter, why only 30 days? Right? Mm-hmm. Why can't I wait 30 days? Why don't I have to do it right away? It's when I'm a renter, I never have to put up a mezuzah. Right? What is it? Uchtatam al mezuzot beitecha, beitecha. V'lo shel acherim. It has to be your own house. V'afagav darshinan beitcha biatcha lanicha biyamin derech biyah. Right? In other words, you have to put it on the right hand side. That's where we get uchtatam al mezuzot beitecha. That it teaches you have to put it on the right hand side. Mikom makom trei beitecha ktiv. It says it twice. One to teach you that it has to be on the right hand side, and one to teach you that you have to own it. It has to be yours. Right, you follow? So why after 30 days do you have to put it up? Why is a renter do you have to put it up after 30 days? Right? Without going into the continuation where he says it's like a talus where you don't have to put on, right? No, it's if I borrow your talus, I don't have to wear, right? I don't have to put tzitzit on it, but after 30 days I have to. He said, again, without going to that, because that's not germane to the subject, but the bottom line is also it says the only reason that as a renter, I have to put a mezuzah up is because it looks like mine after 30 days. When it begins, people start to think it's mine, then they wonder why there's no mezuzah. But short of that, you don't really have to put a mezuzah at all. So the issue of mezuzah, again, if you accept Tosfos' position, the Gemara's analogy is a little better right? The Gemara says, hey, well, let's look at mezuzah. The Gemara says, oh no, that's chovat hadar, that's a separate thing. According to the Rambam, the Gemara has actually brought a huge hammer to solve a small problem, right? It's only the Rabbanan question, who's supposed to do the bedikat, and we bring out the heavy guns, like, mezuzah, that's chovat hadar, before we even say chovat hadar. So that's all right, that maybe, might have different criteria. So I didn't want to put that out there. But the last part I'm interested in for today is the Mesirah Maftech. And the Gemara ends up concluding, Rav Nachman Yitzchak ends up concluding that the issue is based on Mesirah Maftech. That clearly is going to be a schirus issue.
Yeah.
Right? That's not, Mesirah Maftech should have nothing to do with bedikat, right? So, but the problem is, what the heck is Mesirah Maftech? Like I said before, right? We've read Bava Metzia, we've read a lot of dinim of Sheila and Socher. We've never heard of Mesirah Maftech. So that's a position that Tosfot is sympathetic to, particularly in light of Rashi's line. Rashi says, right, and this is like Rashi says this in a couple of places. Rashi says, Mesirah Maftech, when I give you, Michael, when I give you the keys or I give you the code, whatever it is, I think, I give you the keys, right? So that's when it comes into your property. Says Rashi, he kinyan schirut. Wow, that's something new. That's why I wanted to do this, right? No, it's somehow that there's a kinyan schirut. When do you become right? Not when you sign the contract with the rental car company with Hertz, when they give you the keys. That's when you become responsible for things. And we didn't talk about that at all in Bava Metzia so far. Michael, if me and you signed the contract, then I'm going to come in, right? I signed the contract on Airbnb, but I haven't gotten the keys yet. I still have to do it, right? Even though I gave you, right? It doesn't make a difference.
Question, practicality. How many keys are there?
That's clearly what Rashi's thinking.
Yeah.
The problem is, this is what Tosfos goes after Rashi for the jugular, right? You should have thought of this yourself. What are the ways that we're kona things in the world? How are you kona things? Right. Kesef is the question of is Maud kona or not? Shicha. We have chazaka, right? It says Tosfot. Im shemasar mafteach, says the Tosfot, right? Perush Rashi, the Mesirah Maftech had kona. Ve'ein yer l'ri. What he says there? Tosfot says, what the heck are you talking about? We have a whole list of ways that you can be kona things: property, land, all sorts of things, or houses, cars. We know what that is. Amir Berg Meruba, Keshem shekarka nikneit bekesef b'shtar v'chazaka. Kach schirut karka nikneit bekesef b'shtar v'chazaka. Right? So where keys is not the word is the same as chazaka. Right. Chazaka means I'm driving the car, right? Or I get into the car, I'm standing in the car, and I turn on the car. Not when you hand over the keys. Right. You understand? Okay. When you get, in other words, according to this, Danny, when you get the code for the Airbnb, you're responsible. So Airbnb has a thing, you only get it on the day off, right? But whatever, that's fine, right? But let's say you got it the night before because they're going by halachic times, and it would depend on exactly before Shkia, after Shkia.
But is Rashi really saying that the Mesirah Maftech is Kinyan, or is
that's what Tosfot? That's the way Tosfot views what Rashi is saying.
The time you can do it with Kesef Shtar or something, but the Maftech shows you when.
It shows you the when of the chazaka.
You can give the money 3 months in advance. That's not a Kinyan. The Kinyan starts when the Maftech is transferred. The Kinyan is going through the Kesef.
Who Kinyan schirut? Right? So it's hard to, again, you could tell me that Tosfos didn't understand Rashi the way you do. That's fine. That's what Tosa says, right? And there,
It doesn't make sense, right? The Kenyan is clearly needs. All you do is give them the keys.
but right, again, that's you're in Tosas's camp. But Rashi seems to say something, but he doesn't only say it here, he says it in a couple of places. But we have something here new, Michael. That's the point. We have something here that we've never heard of in Meruba. Right? In Meruba, it says Karka is going to be Kesher Chazaka, Karka is going to be Kesher, right?
This would make sense for Shoel. But there isn't a Kesef for Star. Right?
Right, correct. But we didn't really talk about Shoel as much as I wanted to, right? But okay, right. It was that could be the thing. Let's just look at the Tosas' answer because we want to try to finish this. Here we're talking about you gave me the keys, but you haven't moved into the place yet, right? Because you decided to continue on your tiul in the day of instead of going to the Airbnb. Words, whoever has the keys has to do it because whoever doesn't have the keys, whereas it's a practical problem, it's a logistical problem. If there's only one set of the keys to the house, so whoever has to do it has to do it, right? In other words, in the Airbnb model, if there's someone in the middle, a middleman who has the keys, who's not the owner, then in fact, I'm not responsible to do it. Right? Or it's whoever has the keys in the middle has to do it. Or it's the keys is only a logistical problem, but the keys don't represent the kinyan per se. But Rashi says the key, right?
Can't be, well, whatever, it's decided, I don't know if you can make the third party responsible to Bedikat.
Right, it seems absurd.
Yeah.
It seems absurd to do that, but he says that's just a logistical problem. Who can do the bedikat? Which, by the way, opens the possibility that a bedikat has to, it opens up a new possibility here, which I want to explore in a minute, which is that the bedikat has to be done.
Yeah.
Right? We don't care who has to do it. Maybe, before we said, you remember in the Rabbeinu David, no one's responsible? Maybe everyone's responsible, but we just thrust it upon the person who's able to do it right now. Right? That could be a totally different possibility, right? And the Ran says that what Rashi says even farther. He says, so there, Jeff, if you're not convinced that Rashi says it, the Ran definitely says it. He says the very fact that, in other words, we don't need kesef, shtar, or chazaka. Mesir Mafteach does the job, right? That's strange. So it sounds like our Gemara here and the Ran here and Rashi here are saying somehow this Gemara regarding bedikat chametz or regarding schirut in general, we're basically rejecting the Gemara in Meruba. In other words, yes, there's a Gemara in Meruba, but this Gemara just goes against that. In other words, kesef, shtar, and chazaka are true, but that list is not exhaustive. That's basically what you have to say. Tosfot says that list is exhaustive, and therefore Tosfot says this is some sort of secondary problem, where the house has to be checked. You can't check it because you don't have the keys. So even though you don't own it, you still have to check it, right? Rashi and the Ran seem to be saying the list in the Gemara in Meruba that says kesef, shtar, and chazaka is not exhaustive. There's other ways of doing it also, and that opens up a whole new world of schirut for us, which is what I want to explore for the last 2 minutes of our class today.
But it's also consistent because it says about he doesn't need the bedikat.
Yes, correct, right. This is not. I thought about that also. I'm not going to try to make those consistent right now. So what is this Masir Mafteach? What is it? Right? Or it's, if the list is not exhaustive in the Gemara in Meruba, or if Rashi and the Ran say the list is not exhaustive, so I understand what kesef is. I understand what, right? Shtar is. I understand what chazaka is. What's Mafteach? Right. So here, finally, we get to our sugya. In Bava Metzia, we do have one line, which I'm just going to read now. We're going to read it again down the road. But the Gemara in Bava Metzia does have a statement of Rav Huna that Hashoel kardo mechavarav. Now, I grant you this is shoel and not schirut. I'm aware of that problem. But he says something also somewhat radical on Daf Tzaditet, which is one of the next Gemaras we're coming in. Bakabo kanao, lo bakabo lo kanao. Meaning Rav Huna says, when I start digging, I now am a shoel. And before I start digging, even though I brought it into my reshut, maybe I didn't bring it to my reshut, it's not clear to me, I'm not. Meaning, right, do you understand that Gemara says? When do I become a shoel? I become a shoel when I bar the object to use it. When I start using it, I become, right?
What's the cardom?
Cardom is a hoe. Oh. So when I start hoeing, then I become the owner. What happened to kesef, shtar, chazaka? What happened to all those things? So in other words, what?
It might be chazak, but there's no customer style.
Okay, so why not chazaka?
Because it's show.
Right, and what does that mean? It means that shoel and even socher, to some extent, right? The nature of what I'm trying to do is different than what I'm doing in as a kone.
For a purpose.
Right.
But
For it's correct. It's not just a time factor. My level of kinyan is different because I'm only borrowing it to use it. And therefore, it could be that the whole way in which I acquire things is by you. In other words, right? There's a different model. Also, there's a different track, which sometimes can also reflect it in according to Tosfot in schirut. There would also be kesef shtar and chazaka, but the list doesn't have to be exhaustive because what I'm really taking it for is to use it. So if I use it, that's the best way to do it. How do I do that when I take an apartment? I get the keys.
Right. But that could be just a subset of chazaka.
It could be.
Well,
But-
you walk inside.
So that's the thing. No,
Then, yeah.
no, then right. That would be the difference between you and me. Right? You're saying it's a
Show us the balloon scale.
okay. I grant you. I grant
Even
you.
within, Sweden, we can say that it's a subset of chazaka.
You could say right, but then you'd have to. But then, as Michael says, then you should have to go in. What I'm saying is that Schirut and Shoel don't just share chiyuvim, right? Or it's on some level or another. Right? We have a debate whether a socher is a Shoel or not, or a socher is a shomer zachar. But right now, it's again. Remember what happens in a Shoel and a socher. I pay my way out of being for potter to a non-sin, right? Because I'm paying you, so I'm buying an insurance policy. Should an onus happen, I don't want to have to pay you, right? Should someone crash into my car, I don't have to pay you. But fundamentally, I'm a Shoel because I get to use it, right? It could be that usability factor doesn't just affect the world of kinyanim, although again, I grant you I'm potter for onsin. It also affects the way in which I'm kona something, whereas it is in the world of Shoel, and the world of Shoel meaning that we can expand the way we get kinyanim, right? Unlike general kinyan, generally buying, right? Michael, you with me? Generally buying what you have to use very, very specific ways. Here, the way which is going to enable me to use something, i.e. Monsieur Mafteach, that's an assumption, but Monsieur Mafteach, that would already obligate me in bedikat chametz. Not because of the bedikat chametz thing, because that creates reshuto. That makes me the owner vis-a-vis the schirut. Right? You follow?
If I'm gonna borrow your car,
Borrow or rent.
borrow,
Okay.
and you give me the key to your car, have I borrowed it yet? Or
So that's a good question.
it
It could be that's the difference between schirut and shoah. Right? What I would argue is that a socher, yes, because after all, as a socher, I have to have a category, and right now it's mine. Right now I'm renting it. I'm renting it even if it's sitting in my thing. As a shoel, because you've accepted upon yourself such great thing, it's only when you're using it.
Only when.
Or when you start using it, then already you become a shoel.
So if I,
Maybe.
Danny borrows my car and I give him
Maybe.
the key, and.
Maybe, because maybe not. Because according to Rav Huna, again, you have to be bokeabo. It's not only when you're bokeabo. The moment you're bokeabo, that's when you become a shoel.
How committed do you get the keys and borrow?
Well, that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says whoever has the keys, but you're not there, you're not able to use. You can't access it at all. So again, the Gemara doesn't make that distinction. The Gemara says the moment this Monsieur Maftech, that's the kinyan according to Rashi.
They have a physical key, right?
Okay, I think Rashi would say that's also not Monsieur Maftech. Monsieur Maftech means your capacity to use it. So again, just to summarize, either this could be a question of bedikat chametz and how serious we take bedikat chametz, or it could be a question of what socher is. Right? It could be socher again when it comes to what socher is. So we say Monsieur Maftech. Tosfos says Monsieur Maftech. That's just a logistical thing. That's not fundamental. You don't really own it. It's just the house has to be checked. You're the only one who can check it, so check it. Right? According to Rashi, the Monsieur Maftech is the kinyan. Oh, cool. That's a new kinyan. What does that mean? Maybe it's a kinyan of use. Maybe when it comes to the Arba Shomrim or some of the Arba Shomrim, the ones who can use it, at least the Sholem Socher, dafka the usability, right? The fact that you're using it, that's the moment of kinyan. Unlike Mechira, and even though we've been talking about kinyanim until now, this would actually refine our view of what a Sholem and a Socher are, that a Sholem and Socher acquires something dafka when they're using. Okay, that's a bedikat chametz. Shia Chag Kasher v'Sameach. Next week we won't have class.
I need to come out.
Okay, we'll take care of that now. Okay, let me just stop this first. And then,
Wait,
Thank you, Dr. Matt.
You don't know what?
thank you. How do I get back to this?
Oh, we do both. No, we do